Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Tuesday night IGGERET HAGRA series. Tonight's shiur will be for Ilui Nishmat, Sarah Leah Bat Aryeh Hershel Chaim, and Lehavdil also for a Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim Ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Avi Mori David Ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Zora. Also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha Bat Julie, Ayla Bat Marsha, Samuel Ben Marsha, Cephas Ben Marsha, Alexander Ben Marsha, Louis Ben Marsha, Shaul Ben Farzaneh, and all of Am Yisrael. Be'ezrat Hashem will have a Atzlacha Rabba, Refuah Shlema, and all of the righteous Noahides will be able to weather the storm that's out there in the world with the wars and the viruses and the corruption with the right mindset, Be'ezrat Hashem, which perhaps Be'ezrat Hashem maybe we'll talk about a little bit tonight. So a brief update before we get into the shiur. Be'ezrat Hashem, we've confirmed on the schedule that the next big event, Be'ezrat Hashem, is going to be in a few weeks on March 23rd here in Florida, South Florida, at the same location, the Bonaventure Resort. Baruch Hashem, the last couple of events were exceptional. There's a bunch of people that wanted to come from New York, from California, from different places that didn't make it yet and are assuring us that they're going to come this time. I'm hoping that everybody that already came and everyone that hasn't come will pack the place up, Be'ezrat Hashem, and so we can get some chizuk right at the right time, Be'ezrat Hashem, because we're talking about right at a time where we're in between Purim and Pesach, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we got salvation, we're going to another salvation, but we're also in a world that's looking for salvation. So Be'ezrat Hashem will learn what we need to learn, get the chizuk that we need to get in order to put ourselves in the right mindset, Be'ezrat Hashem. So that's one. Secondly, there's going to be a new campaign, Be'ezrat Hashem, that's going to be launched, Be'ezrat Hashem, hopefully by the next day or so, to continue helping the poor. I already sent some money today to help a bunch of people, Baruch Hashem, in Tel Zion, and we have quite a few people in Eretz Yisrael that need help, Avrechim, different special Jewish neshamot that simply cannot make it through the month on a regular basis, needless to say, during the holidays. Each year we do several campaigns specifically to help the poor. Now more than ever we need your help because for a few reasons. Number one, it's the cost of everything. For anyone that follows Israeli news, the cost of everything in Israel has skyrocketed to the point where people are refraining from buying things like soda and yogurt and a lot of different goods that simply have become unaffordable. Vegetables have skyrocketed, and of course the anti-Torah, lefty, liberal government is the reason. For anyone that's looking for the reason behind it, it's the biggest reason is the fact that this anti-Torah Zionist government wrote a check, or is writing a check on a regular basis, for 53 billion shekels to give to the terrorist Palestinians, just for them not to bomb us, even though they're bombing us anyway, just for them not to be terrorists, even though they're being terrorists anyway, but yet they're getting paid 53 billion for that, okay? And since somebody has to pay for it, they're taxing their own people. And of course, the people that are already struggling and even the people that are middle class are the ones that are suffering the most, not only because the cost of food has literally skyrocketed, in many cases has doubled in price, tripled in price, unbelievable prices. Some people tell me how much some stuff costs there to get a basic goods to eat is become unaffordable for many people. even people that have 2 or 3 jobs. It's become a nightmare for a lot of people, and Be'ezrat Hashem, this will be a tool that Hashem uses to uproot this evil government. But in the meantime, the people that have already been struggling are struggling a lot more. And I know that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon to donate to Ukraine and to different people that are in Ukraine right now. And by all means, everybody can do whatever they want with their money. It's your money you could do what you want with. But I can assure you that there is already plenty of money going to that cause, and very, very little money is going to the poor people in Eretz Yisrael. And quite frankly, there's also a lot of corruption, in the donation world, and many times the money doesn't reach its destination, and a mevin yavin. So everybody that's donating, a few people have asked me, should I donate to this campaign? I told them if I had $1 million, I wouldn't give them $1. I wouldn't give them $1 to some of these campaigns. Why? Because it's simply there's a lot of things are fishy, and let's just put it that way. A lot of things are fishy as far as whether they need it, they don't need it, whether it's really going to the right place, not going to the right place, and also because there are people that we know are in desperate need, that we know who they are, and are struggling nonetheless. So again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from donating if you know that you're donating to the right place. It's just that what I do know is that people are very naive. They're good-hearted, and their good heart leads them to become naive, and they think that any campaign that's on the internet means, and there's some religious figure behind it, some rabbi that you've never heard of in your life, some community that you don't even know how to pronounce their name, but they're able to raise $1 million, $2 million, $5 million in a matter of a few days. And quite frankly, it's not something that I could ever encourage the people that I care about to do. So with that being the case, be cautious, with the money that you're donating, because this is the only money you really have. Whatever you donate is what you truly have to take with you to Olam Haba. And if you're donating blindly and hoping that God's going to make it work, that's not the way it works. You have to do your due diligence. You have to be careful and conscious of things. And again, like I said, it's the issues today are much bigger than just money. It's much bigger than just money. So a lot of people are asking the whole issue of what's going on with with this war. What's the opinion? And I think that it's worth it to cover a couple of things that we didn't cover in a previous shiur, which Rabbi Yisrael discussed, and I'll elaborate on it further in regards to this war between Russia and Ukraine. Now, years ago, there was a special Jew that had Yirat Shamayim, that served the Kadosh Baruch Hu to the best of his abilities while also working. He had a flour mill, and this special Jew, his name was Israel, Israel in Hebrew, in English. This Israel was a wonderful person, very giving. Each day he'd wake up, go to synagogue, pray. After that, he'd learn some Torah, and then after that, he'd go to work to try to make a living. Now, his flour mill was doing well. People would buy the flour from him. And in that very same town, they had, this is in Ukraine, by the way, hence the reason of why I'm mentioning this. In that same town, there was a very wealthy poet, a squire, that was famously anti-Semitic. And he had more money than he knows what to do with. And he lived close by to where the flour mill of Israel was. One day, he decided that the fact that this Jew is succeeding is simply too bothersome to him. He has to get his nose stuck in there. He has to get involved. He has to do whatever he can to ruin his business. And that's what he set out to do. He called some of his messengers, some of his workers, his managers over. He told them, listen, I want you to go to Germany, order me the best machines in the world, deliver them over here. I'm going to build a flour mill that is going to produce better quality flour at half the price. And that's what they did. This is a true story, by the way. It's not a story I'm making up for the sake of the shiur. Now, this Poretz was happy, was already, one of those evil types of people, rubbing his hands, can't wait to destroy Israel's flour mill. And word got around that this is what's going to happen, that this new flour mill is being built, these new machines were delivered, and Israel's business is on the verge of collapse before this thing even started, because while everybody is a customer of Israel for a long time, if they give you better quality flour for half the price, very few customers, if any, are going to stand. Especially since this is a land of non-Jews, so the non-Jews were celebrating with the squire, with the Poretz, happy that a Jew is going to get destroyed. And of course, the Jews were sad for their fellow Jew, but what can they possibly do? Israel was concerned, but like a Jew does, what do you do when you're in trouble? You go to your rabbi. You go to your rabbi. His rabbi was the Rebbe Michotkov. Rebbe Michotkov was a big tzaddik. His name was Rabbi David Moshe Friedman. Lived about 170 years ago or so. And the Rebbe Michotkov, he started Chassidut Chotkov. He was the fourth generation grandson from the Magid Mimezrich, the Talmid Muvak of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Rebbe Michotkov was a Ish Kadosh, was a holy man. And when he was there at the time, he was in a Chotkov, was at the time a part of Poland, and today it's Ukraine. So when Israel went to visit his Rebbe, he cried to him. He told him, Rebbe, I don't know what to do. This Poretz, he hates us, he hates Jews, and he's only building this business to destroy me. He doesn't need the money. He's not interested in the business. The only reason behind what he's doing is simply to destroy me. The Rebbe Michotkov looks at this beautiful Jew, he's crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, coming to a Chacham, what do I do? And the Rebbe says to him, you have nothing to worry about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings salvation to those that are being chased. Those that are being chased, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings them salvation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it protects those people that get chased. So him chasing you, by default, is opening the gates of heaven that are full of mercy, and salvation will come. And of course, Israel he says, I believe you, Rabbi, but what can I possibly do? I mean, the mill is going to be better quality than mine. The equipment is much better than mine. It's new. It's improved. I can't afford to compete with that. And on top of it, he wants to sell the flour for half the price. I mean, how could this be? Again, the Rebbe Michotkov very simply says to him, don't worry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's salvation is going to come to you. Because this evil man, he's not looking to do this for any good reason. He's doing evil for the sake of evil. So while he has plans to sell better quality flour for half the price, remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make that better quality flour turn into bitter bread that's also black. Israel needed some type of connection between the blessing to a reality that he could visualize, and that's what he got. The rabbi said, Israel said Amen, and he went home with a lot of confidence. Boost of bitachon. Shortly after, the mill of the Poretz opens. Every single one of the customers that's been coming to Israel for years went to the Poretz, especially on the grand opening, with the exception of two of his friends that just because they're fellow Jews that loved their friend as well, they said, listen, we're going to pay double for yours just because we don't want to support this evil man, but you can't force everybody in the community to do the same. Meaning that both the Gentiles that hated the Jews and the Jews that liked Jews also looked out for themselves and went to get the better quality flour for half the price. The place was packed. People were taking sacks and sacks of flour. They came from different towns. Of course, the locals. And as you would have it, Israel is sitting there praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when his friends come looking to see their fellow Jew upset and crying, they see him praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a smile. They say to him, how could you be smiling in such a day? He says, the Rebbe said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring me salvation. I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring me salvation. And he told him what the Rebbe said. Wow. Word got around and it got to the Poretz. When the Poretz heard that the Rebbe said that his flour is going to be black and bitter, he started laughing. Laughing at this Jew. You really believe that some rabbi can change nature? You really believe that my mill that's worth 10 times what his mill is really going to lose? What a joke these Jews are. And he started making fun of him. Started making fun of the Jew. A few days passed. People started using the flour for Shabbat. One of the women named Rivka took out the bread, and to her dismay, she saw that the same challah that she's been baking for over 20 years, the same delicious recipe, has changed. The outcome has changed. In front of her are loaves of black bread that's harder than the walls that are building our house. She has no idea what happened here. The rest of the family looks at the bread and did you do something different? She said, no, it's the same recipe for 20 years. Well, let's check with the neighbors. Let's see if they had any issues. They went to the neighbors and they found out that their cakes and their cookies and their bread was also black. Also like tar. Also unedible. And in fact, every single house that bought bread, brought the flour from this Poretz, saw the curse of the Rebbe come to life. Of course, everybody came back to this Poretz complaining, saying, listen, your flour, there's something wrong with it. Give us the money back. The Poretz, of course, he has to protect his own honor. He's a Ukrainian important person. He can't just tell people to go fly a kite. No, don't worry. I'm going to give you better. I'm going to go send my people to go buy even better quality flour, and I'm going to replace this one. You have nothing to worry about. But no matter what he did, and no matter how many times he changed the flour from different providers, the very same outcome came to life as he was losing his money, his reputation, and everybody saw a huge Kiddush Hashem in the middle of Ukraine, where the Rebbe said that the black bread is the flour is gonna be black bread, and that's what it was. This Ukrainian Poretz came on his knees begging Israel the Jew to please I beg you, become my partner. Go tell your Rebbe. go tell your Rebbe Michotkov to take off the curse. And in return, I'm going to give you a partnership in my mill for no money. Yisrael was a good man. And he said, listen, I can't decide anything. I have to go to my Rebbe. He went back to the Rebbe Michotkov. And Rav Friedman, the Rebbe, says to him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the prophet, En shalom, Hashem amar lereshaim. No peace, Hashem says to the wicked. Because his intentions were deeply rooted in evil, there is no way that a blessing can come upon him. And the curse will never come off. Sorry, no sorry, too late. Such a person cannot be forgiven. Such a person has to deal with the consequences. And that's what happened. That mill went bankrupt. That squire lost. And Israel not only built his business, but everybody now wanted to do business with him even more than before because they knew that he had the blessing from Shamayim. Now, of course, this is a fantastic, extraordinary story of the works of wonders of the tzaddikim of the previous generation. But it also tells us that not everything is the way it looks. Not everyone is always the victim that they seem to be. Not everything is 100% the way the media portrays for it to be. Now, I'm not telling anybody to pick a side, whether it be Ukraine or it be Russia. What I am telling you here is that you have to know the truth as far as what the Torah's perspective is. First and foremost, those of you that are spending your days and nights watching videos about some rabbi telling you this is the end of the world, this is Gog Magog, the Mashiach is coming any day, stop it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us clear instructions of what that war will look like. And this is not it. If you want to see what it looks like, go to Zechariah chapter 14. Go to Yechezkel chapter 38. There's a reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu specified how the war will look like. Different things that will happen. The same as the Ramban says about Gehenom, where he says there's a reason why the sages detail to us the exact measurements of Gehenom, the 3 entrances to Gehenom, and the different details of the chambers that happen in it, to make sure that if a heretic with a long white beard and now a short black beard that seems yeshivish, that call themselves Hasidish, call themselves the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, and they tell you that there's no such thing as burning a neshama, because how can you burn a neshama? Ha ha ha! The Ramban 800 years ago says the Gemara already dealt with such apikosim, such heretics, where we have sages that clarify the entrance to Gehenom, the size of Gehenom, the type of fires that are in Gehenom, meaning that the day that the neshama was created was also the day that a special fire to burn it was created. So you do not believe the heretics, whether it be Manis Friedman or YY or any of the other Reshaim that are out there that are creating a new Torah. You're not going to believe any of those people that tell you that this doesn't exist, because we have our Torah and we're not changing it. No matter who and what decides to say what it is. We have our Torah, we have our tradition, we have our Masoret. We're not going to change it. Our Masoret is that Gog Magog will look a specific way. There's going to be certain things that happen. Can this build up to be that? Of course it's possible that it can build to that. But is it right now? Absolutely not. Second thing you need to know. When it comes to these wars, it is a mistake for the Jewish people to pick a side, especially publicly. Whether you want to pick a side in your own mind, that's your business. But once a person starts expressing their opinion publicly, whether it be on the social media or articles and things of that nature, then whether you like it or not, the world will always view you as the representation of the Jewish people. Now, if you are Chinese and you wrote an article about how much you like or dislike Putin or his enemies, no one's really going to care. If you are from Turkey and you wrote a blog about how much you agree with this war, no one's going to care. If you are from Indonesia or Australia or perhaps even from America and you decided to write an article, a blog post, even a TV interview to say about how much you agree or disagree, no one would care. But the moment that it's noticeable that you are a Jew, regardless of which part of the world you live in, you now become the representation of the Jewish people. Now, of course, Jewish people, you have 3 Jews, 4 opinions, maybe even 6. But the reality is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want us to express these opinions because it's none of our business. Just like it wasn't the squire, the evil squire's business to go into a business that he didn't belong in. Lehavdil million avdalot, a million of differences between this evil squire and the holy nation of Am Yisrael. But this is none of our business. For all of you that are out there saying, oh, but it's not fair that Putin is doing this. How could he do it? He's a terrorist. He should be killed. Habibi, relax yourself. Go spend some time reading history. And I'm not even talking about ancient history. History 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago. How about this? All of history. This is how a Torah-less nation operates. You have a dictator, leader, president, or whatever you want to call him, that has whatever he has and decides he wants more. Oh, but it's not fair. Go live in a different world then, Habibi. This is the way his world operates. He doesn't have spiritual ambitions to go and elevate his neshama, to go to heaven and serve mankind. He has an ambition to acquire more. Just like the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah says, you give him 100, he wants 200. You give him 200, he wants 400. You give him 400, he wants 800. Why does he want more as he gets more? Because that's his life. So while you may think that, let's say, Putin is the enemy, guess what? His people don't think that. They think, hey, he's going to get us some more security. So look, Ukraine has been a long time enemy anyway, so it's not like they go and attack their best friend. Number 2, there are people that have a lot of resources. Russia is a big country, they need those resources. But you don't need them today, you could just buy them. Sure, I could just buy them, or I could just conquer the land. Yeah, but that's not fair. What do you mean it's not fair? That's how nations work. They go and conquer each other. They go and beat each other. And what do you think? That your country, wherever you may live, whether it be America or any other country, wouldn't do it if they had the opportunity? This is how a Torah-less environment works. If they have the strength, they portray that strength. They use that strength to do what they want to do. This is no different than any other time in history. This is not justifying or supporting evil. This is just a reality that everyone has to come to terms with, and therefore expressing our so-called negative opinions or the condemning it. Oh, I condemn, we condemn him for doing such a thing. Who the hell are you that he's going to care about you? I don't understand people. Go mind your business. Go mind your business. What's your business? Your business is to serve Hashem. Your business is to serve Hashem. Because the Zohar Kadosh says to us, Before one nation goes to war with another nation, they're sarim, they're angels. Each nation has an angel. Their angels first fight. And when they start fighting in Shamayim, they fight down here. And Am Yisrael needs to know, the only thing you should be concerned with when you hear that there are two nations at war is that it's time for you to do tshuva. Not to go write blog posts and express your opinion about who you think is going to win and whether America should get involved and whether China is none of this stuff matters. It's not your business. Your business is to do what the Torah says. The Torah says, do tshuva. That's it. We were supposed to do tshuva yesterday, the day before, a week ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, and forevermore, and forever after. This is how it works. Our job in the world is not to become the news. And in fact, when we express our opinions, whether we're supporting one side or the other, we are actually putting a target on our face. We are actually causing more harm than good, because no one's going to listen to you anyway. Putin is not going to stop the war because some rabbi decided to do a lecture about it to say that he condemns his actions. Needless to say, he's not going to stop it because some news network decided to write 15 different articles about it. He doesn't care about your opinion. In fact, it may actually ignite him to make things even worse. Furthermore, it's not your role in the world. It's not your role in the world to speak about these things publicly. Your role in the world is to speak Torah publicly, to share Torah publicly. You don't have any Torah to share? Then try being quiet. It's a very good trait. In fact, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says in the Mishnah in Avot, I've lived among Chachamim my whole life, and I've learned many good things, but none of the things are as good as the lesson of how being quiet is beneficial for a person. If you're a fool, no one will know. And if you're smart, it allows you to acquire more wisdom because you're able to listen to wise people. But everybody decides to make videos and articles and we condemn and we support and we do this and we do that. Oh, because there's a big keilah there and there's a big keilah everywhere and there's a small keilah, and I promise you, nothing is what it seems like. Nothing is what it seems like. What they're doing over there is what people do when they're in that position. If you are a king of a country with endless supply of everything you possibly wanted, guess what? You'd probably want more too. Why? You'd rationalize it to secure the future, to be even a bigger power, and whatever other reasons people have for these crazy things. You would rationalize it too. Why? Because that's what leaders do. It's not saying that it's good. It's just simply saying it's a reality. To expect anything else is simply stupid and naive. And anyone that thinks that their own country, their own backyard, doesn't do it or wouldn't do it if they had the same opportunity is simply lying to themselves. This is simply a reality, Rabotai. And that's why we as Torah observant people have to stick our nose where it belongs. Our nose belongs in the Torah, nothing else. Don't waste your time watching the news. Don't waste your time going over the news. Don't become an expert of the news, because we've already fell for that Satan's trap over the last couple of years where people became obsessed about Corona. Then they became obsessed about the vaccine. Then they became obsessed about the conspiracy behind the vaccine. Now they're obsessed about these wars. I mean, don't you understand? These are all messages from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are all messages from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mind your business. Yeah, but there's Jews over there. Okay, so support them quietly. Why do you have to make such a big stink? You want to go support somebody? By all means, go support somebody. But you don't have to go do everything that they're doing every day, every 2 seconds. Somebody's saying they're condemning, they're this. Who are you? What do you think your role in the world is? I promise you, neither one of the of the leaders cares about your opinions. And the fact that it looks like, oh, yeah, but he did good. He came to the Kotel. Both of them did. Both of them had relationships that were relatively decent with the Jewish people at different times. Both of them have reasons to do whatever it is that they're doing. It's not our business. Simple. It's not our business. Our business, go serve Hashem. That's our business. Everything else, it's not our business. And by not our business, I'm not telling you, listen, go stop buying guns and going to fight the war. I know none of you are doing it. By not our business, what I'm saying to you is that every single minute you watch the news, you read the news, you obsess yourself with the news, is bitul Torah 100%, and that is bringing tragedy to the world. That bitul Torah, that waste of time, that's what's bringing tragedy to the world. Not Putin, not the other one, not this one, none of that. What's bringing tragedy to the world is people are not learning Torah. And instead they're watching the news. That's what's bringing tragedy to the world. So if you're so upset about their tragedy, stop causing tragedy yourself. Because the reality is, our role in the world is not to be politicians or newscasters. And anyone that tells you otherwise is simply doesn't know Torah or is simply a liar. I don't know what they are, but either way, this is what the truth is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically told Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's parasha, and of course countless times throughout the Torah, how to do things, how to serve Him. In this week's parasha, Parashat Pekudei, chapter 39, HaKadosh Baruch Hu repeats the same thing in the Torah, and of course we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very particular with not only the words that He included in the Torah, but to make sure that if anything is ever repeated, there is an extraordinary amount of lessons to be learned from it. But yet He says the same thing multiple times within the same paragraph. Kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. Kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe. Kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe. As Hashem had commanded Moshe. As Hashem had commanded Moshe. Multiple times it's repeated. Okay, I get it, obviously. Who else is going to command Moshe? Who else is going to command Moshe? Of course it's Hashem. But why do you have to repeat it so many times? At least one small lesson we can learn is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what He wants. And He gave us instructions in order to make sure we know what He wants. He wants us to serve Him in a specific way. And the Rambam writes in his Yad Chazakah that there is no mitzvah in the world more important than learning Torah. Nothing is more important than learning Torah. No mitzvah supersedes Torah. So when a person spends their time wasting it, watching the news, becoming emotionally involved with the news, whether it be the virus, the vaccine, all this mumbo jumbo, you are in essence taking what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, you're simply putting it in the garbage, or in a nicer terms, in the closet, and you're going and playing with the garbage. Because that's what's happening today. People are consumed with the news and did not learn a single lesson of how people ended up losing their olam haba as a result of their obsession with the news in the last 2 years, where their obsession with corona and the vaccine led them to countless sins that they did not even imagine were possible, because they figured, what? I'm just watching the news to make sure what's going on is I know what's going on. What's so bad about knowing what's going on? What's so bad about knowing what's going on is because you're thinking that there's going to be something new under the sun. I don't know what's going on in the news. You know how I know that there is, bad stuff and this one and that one? Simple. The news doesn't change. Only thing that changes is the names. Rabbi Yisrael alav shalom said it countless times in his lectures over the years, wrote it in his books. You don't need to read the news. Simply, it's the same news over and over again, just the names change. For thousands of years, it's the same news. Names change. Now it's this leader wants to kill that leader. Tomorrow it's going to be that leader trying to kill the other leader. Now it's this economy going up. And then it's going to be this economy going down. Now it's this trade, that trade. It's all the same thing. Shlomo HaMelech says, nothing new under the sun. You don't need to read the news. All you got to do is read the Torah and you're going to know the news. Read the Torah and you're going to know the news. So please, Rabotai, you have to stop causing damage to yourself, because the people that are obsessed with Corona, some of them literally left Torah, left the world of Torah, left religiosity as a result of their obsessions with the Corona and the virus, and how they were disappointed with the rabbis that weren't supportive of the vaccine, or disappointed and disgusted with the rabbis that were against it or for it, whichever side they were in. There were crazy people on this side, there were crazy people on that side. And guess what? Both of those people have victims that literally have lost their olam haba because of those obsessions. I know firsthand people that literally became so obsessed, they became more active than the news networks. Because the news networks usually focus on their own stuff. These people, they made sure to watch and read all of the news, all of the networks. Oh, CNN says that, but Fox says that, but this other independent channel, it says that. But there's also several other independent channels in different countries, and it says this. Oh, and did you watch Dr. Zelenko? And did you watch Dr. this one? And he's a Jew. Oh, he's not a Jew, but he's really smart. He has a PhD. He's a really big doctor. I never heard of him before, but it says on TV over there that he's a really big doctor. Oh, and did you see this guy's blog post? Oh, did you see that? Who cares about these things? Did any of these articles help anybody? Serve Hashem better in any way? Did any of these articles do anything positive for anybody? No. All it did is make people either look crazy or go crazy. And this is exactly happening again. The Gemara tells us, you see, there's a war, you have to realize it's a message from Shamayim. Not if you see there's a war against Am Yisrael. That's already a decree. That's already a decree. That already means that we didn't listen to the wars of the nation's message, to the tsunamis of the nation's message, to the earthquakes of the nation's message to tell us to do tshuva. When there's a war on us, chas v'shalom, that's already a decree. Right now, there are warning messages, countless warning messages. And if we do not roll up our sleeves and start realizing it's time for us to start learning Torah, to live by it, we're losing a lot more than we're gaining. What these nations are going to do, they're going to do. What we do will have much more impact than any tank. If we start doing tshuva seriously, stop lying about the basic principles of Jewish faith, such as schar ve'onesh, reward and punishment, stop distorting the Torah in order to appease people, start delivering the truth to people, we can bring peace. We can bring salvation. But if we continue watching and spreading the so-called news, I promise you, nothing good will come out of it. Not for the individual, and surely not for the people. And all of these different campaigns and different things that people are doing, I promise you, it's something that you have to be very careful of. You have to be very, very careful of. I feel really bad when I see that there are so much corruption out there, and people, because of their naive hearts and emotional, driven decisions, they literally lose the only money they truly have. So now, the Gaon of Vilna elaborate on the point that we have started discussing in regards to learning Torah. Over the last few weeks, the Gaon of Vilna has warned us time and time again to make sure that we learn Torah, that we dedicate our life to Torah, that we don't waste our time with idle conversations, that we focus on fixing our character traits, sending our children to the right type of education, never send them to the public school or to be educated by people that do not teach the truth. He warned us time and time again about fixing our own character traits and never thinking that we've done enough, especially those of us that spend time learning Musar, but yet do not apply those lessons. Because if you've been learning Musar, or you've been learning in a kollel, or you've been learning Torah in somewhere or another for several years, and your spouse is still making the same exact or even more complaints against you as far as the way you're behaving, there's something wrong with your learning. If the world around you has not started to appreciate your Torah learning, your Torah life, after you've been doing it for several years, there's something wrong. And that wrong is not necessarily just in those people. Because the Gemara says in Masechet Brachot and several other places that a person that has real Yirat Shamayim, real fear of the Almighty, his words are heard. His words are heard, meaning that if you've already been a Baal Tshuva for 4 or 5 years, if you've already been religious your whole life, if you've been learning and you've been dedicating, but yet you have constant issues, not just from one person, but from the world around you. It seems like everybody's your enemy. It seems like you can't get along with anyone. That means that there's something wrong. And the Gaon of Vilna explained to us last week and over the last couple of weeks that many times a person can learn Musar, but nothing would change because of the way that they're learning it. Either they're learning it without actually intending on applying it to their life. They're learning it superficially, just reading the book. They're just listening to the lecture, but they're not actually engraving it into their own hearts, seeing the flaw in themselves, seeing the deficiency in themselves. Or they do see the deficiency in themselves. They do intend on actually applying it to themselves, but that's where it stops. They intend on doing it, but they don't do it because there's no plan of attack. There's no plan of action. And the most important part of learning Musar is to have that impact that you're reading about, or you're listening to, that emotional impact, having a plan of what to do with it, seeing yourself in those words, and literally drawing up a plan of how to apply those words to your life. Because emotions have a lot to do with how Musar would apply, would be used and utilized in your life. And when a person does not have some type of plan of action, they could literally be listening to the best Musar in the world by Rabbi Yisrael Misalant, by Arav Nisim Yagen, by the Baal Shem Tov, by Moshe Rabbeinu himself, the ultimate Musar teacher. And yet, nothing would happen. Their spouse will still hate them. Their kids will still pretty much hope that they don't see them tonight. Their fellow workers can't wait until they quit or get fired. The world around them will simply continue to detest them because of their arrogance, because of their ignorance, because of their anger, because of their stinginess, because of just their nasty attitude, because of this know-it-all type of behavior, and so on and so forth. Where you have certain people where they utilize Torah in such an inappropriate way that the Gemara says it's better off they didn't learn. It's better off they didn't learn. Because they're misutilizing this tool, this holy tool, where instead of it being a Sam Chaim, a potion for life, it's become Sam Mavet. And unfortunately, I've seen this. I've seen this one too many times where you see these newly inspired people. Sometimes they're Baalei Tshuva, sometimes they're, they've always been religious per se, but they've gotten recent chizuk. But all of a sudden, they feel like, oh, I've been doing this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I already know better than the teachers. I'm already going to start rebuking the teacher. I'm already going to start rebuking anyone that walks my way. They already feel like they've become the Rabbi Yisrael Misalant / Baal Shem Tov, and they can disperse their opinion and their viewpoint, and they truly believe they have what's called Da'at Torah. And unfortunately, they cause more damage than you could imagine. Many times, that damage is not something that's easy to fix, if at all. Other times you have people that simply say, listen, I already learned enough on my own. I don't need to learn from any rabbi. I already could learn on my own. He has eyes. I have eyes. He can read. I can read. He could arrive at the right conclusion. I could arrive at the right conclusion. Well, yeah, but what about the fact that he has been doing it for 20 more years than you? Doesn't that count for something? Okay, so maybe it'll take me longer to get to the conclusion, but I'll get there anyway. They have such obnoxious confidence in their own abilities and such lack of belief in siyata dishmaya, divine providence, that they simply reject anything that they do not feel like they own this idea. They reject any advice, they reject any type of teachings that they believe is not truly their own. And unfortunately, people like that, it's unless they change, it was better off they didn't learn, because the learning has turned them into bigger monsters than they were beforehand. Now, of course, it doesn't end there. The Gaon of Vilna elaborates further on those of us that are trying to learn, trying to utilize the Torah as a tool in our life that we live by and not die by, but sometimes need a little bit of help to know whether we're going right or left. We need our rabbis, we need our poskim, we need to know. So the Gaon of Vilna does not skip a beat and says that this message that he's giving is not just for the wives, it's not just for the kids, it's not just for those people that perhaps he's closest to biologically, but rather also for those that learn Torah, including his son-in-law. And he says, "V'gam et chatani, ani mazir b'kol zeh." I also appeal to my son-in-law to adhere to all of the above. Shikra lifneim kaniskar lamala, v'shiyeh limudo l'shem shamayim. That he read this letter to the children, as I have stated, and that his learning should be l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. Up to here is what we're going to try to elaborate on, where the Gaon of Vilna brings a very complicated sugya, very complicated matter that's debated among chachamim of truly what it is, which is learning Torah for the sake of heaven. Now, first and foremost, why do we even need to learn Torah for the sake of heaven? Now, of course, the heretics, whether it be the Manis, Friedmans of the world that says God needs you, would use such a statement of learning Torah for the sake of heaven to justify their heresy of saying, oh, you're learning Torah for the sake of heaven, that means that God needs your Torah. This is pure spiritual stupidity. It cannot be described in any other fashion other than pure spiritual stupidity that also happens to be heretical to the extent where it causes the person to eliminate themselves from the nation of Israel, because this is a violation of one of the 13 principles of faith, where a person is not allowed to believe such things, such as that Hashem is incomplete, that Hashem needs anything. In Parashat Truma, in the beginning of Parashat Truma, Onkelos says, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, V'itnu li Truma, that they'll give me Truma? They would take from me Truma. Why take? So you learn from there that when you give tzedakah, you're taking something. You're not giving anything. In order to make sure that the heretics that live in the year 2022, that call themselves Hasidim, unfortunately call themselves even Chabad, and destroying the name of Chabad. Literally taking the history of Chabad and throwing it in the garbage. I have no idea how the leaders of Chabad are not putting these people on cherem, whether it's YY, or it's Manis, or it's all the other apikosim that say God needs something. Anyone that says such a thing cannot be counted a minyan. Anyone that says such a thing cannot be counted in a minyan. This is what you have to understand. This is not my rules. This is simply Torah. And now there are literally thousands and thousands of books in English, in Hebrew, and other language that are being printed with the so-called support of Chabad, the so-called support of the Baal Shem Tov, the so-called support of the Lubavitcher Rebbe Alav Shalom, the so-called support of the world of Hasidut and Judaism, saying God needs something. There is no bigger desecration of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's name that's printed in a book today than such a statement. But unfortunately, this is going unanswered. And with the exception of a couple of people that are trying to do their best to warn the public, no one is saying a single thing. Even the people that agree. They come to you and say, listen, Rabbi, I understand. You're right. He's a heretic. But why do you have to talk about it? Why don't you just be friends with everybody? Why don't you just, leave it alone? It's not, you just tell your students not to listen to him. Why do you have to make a whole show about it? And I said, because it's my obligation. Said that it's your obligation, it's his obligation, it's everybody has obligation, but do you do all your obligations? Literally, instead of supporting and trying to tell you, listen, you know what, Chazaku Baruch, I'm going to share this, I'm going to call my rabbi, I'm going to tell my community, warn them against these heretics. What do? They try to cool you off. Mamash, 100% like Amalek itself. And unfortunately, some of these people call themselves my friends. They're not my friends. They call themselves my friends. They think they're my friends by telling me to calm down. What calm down? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's people are in danger every single day that this material is out there. But the rabbinical world, the world of Chabad, that is apparently in the recent PW research, has become its own sect of Judaism. It's no longer considered among the Orthodox. It's now its own sect of Judaism. I'm not sure if that was a decision by PW research or by Chabad, but nonetheless, this is a really serious problem. It's actually the Gaon of Vilna's prophecy practically coming true, that he said that Chabad is the closest thing to Judaism. He wasn't a fan of Hasidut. Of course, we saw a lot of fantastic things, good things come out of Hasidut, a lot of good things come out of Chabad and other Hasiduts, but of course, these damaged, these rotten fruits that say that God needs something are not part of that good. They're part of the bad. They're exactly what the Gaon of Vilna was worried about. But nonetheless, this is what's happening in the world today. You have heresy running rampant everywhere. Very few people are speaking about it. Instead of using the Torah as the Torah is supposed to be used, they'll tell you learning Torah Lishma is a proof that God needs you. Because if you are learning for the sake of heaven, that means that heaven needs you. But the Torah says no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in Parashat Truma, I'm telling you I don't need something. Onkelos specifically says you're taking a tzedakah to show you that you're taking when you give. Not that I need anything from you. Or in the prophet Job. The prophet Job says, Im tzadakta matitenlo. If you are right, if you give something, what can you possibly give him? In so many words, implying that you cannot give Hashem anything. Anything you can't give him. But yet, the opposite of this basic level teachings is everywhere. So the Gaon of Vilna is telling us, you have to learn Torah Lishma. You have to learn Torah Lishma. You have to learn Torah for the sake of heaven. So we have to understand, what if it doesn't mean that God needs this Torah? What does it mean? Why do I even have to learn Torah like this? Why can't I learn Torah for the sake of me? Why do I have to learn Torah for the sake of heaven? I mean, technically, the Gemara says in multiple places that mimakom shelo lishma ba lishma, that even if you're learning Torah for the sake of yourself, you're learning Torah for the sake of not getting punished, you're learning Torah for the sake of getting reward even in this world, or you're learning Torah for the sake of getting a reward in the next world, still do it, and eventually, if you're serious, you're going to end up learning Torah for the sake of heaven instead of for the sake of yourself. Meaning that regardless of why you're learning, you should learn. But ideally, you should learn Torah in its purest form, which is called Lishma, for the sake of heaven. So, the question is, why? Why do I need to learn Torah for the sake of heaven if God doesn't need it? If God doesn't need it, then why do I need to learn for His sake? Because first and foremost, it's not Torah for the sake of heaven because heaven needs it. It's Torah for the sake of heaven, because you want to show heaven how much you love it. But we're going to elaborate on that. First and foremost, why do we even need to read over and over again? Why do we need to review? Why do we need to even learn? Once I've read the Chumash one time, why do I need to read it again every year? The Halakha in Shulchan Aruch says that it doesn't matter how old I am, whether I am 13 years old or 83 years old, whether I'm the biggest rabbi in the world or just an average Jew, I am obligated to read the weekly parasha a couple of times and then the commentary on it once. Doesn't matter how many times I've done it. Meaning that I and you and Rav Kanievsky and Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef and Rav Mazuz and all the greatest Jews in the world and all of the lowliest Jews in the world all have the same halachic obligation to read the weekly Torah portion twice and commentary by Onkelos or Rashi once. That's what we're obligated to do. Now, obviously anyone that knows a little bit about Rav Kanievsky knows that Rav Kanievsky, he reads an enormous amount of Torah. I would say that he probably learns more Torah in one day than most people learn in their entire lives. It's unbelievable how it's humanly possible to learn so much, and he by himself knows, and everybody knows, that he doesn't learn as much as what the Chida learned. And the Chida had a regimen of how much Torah he learned every day. I'm not really sure if he had a 24-hour system or simply had, 150, 250 years per day. Not hours, 150 years per day. Because the amount of Torah that he learned per day, according to the regiment that I saw, I don't know how that's possible in a single day. I don't know how that's possible in a single year. But this is what they learned. And you see, the Rabbi Yosef Karo, he wrote that the point of the Shulchan Aruch, you have 4 big books, is for you to review it, the whole thing. Just to review the whole thing once a month. Once a month? You're lucky if you finish it once a year. You're lucky if you have people finish it once in their life. But this is how it was. So, and people think that people are smarter today, but when you really understand what the Jewish sages were capable of doing and what they're still capable of doing, you realize that obviously there's divine providence here. There's an involvement from Shamayim here. So the question is, why do they have to? Why do we have to keep learning? Now, going over Torah is not just something that you do superficially. It's not just something that you do as a hobby. You have to have an understanding that Torah is your life. Meaning that when you look at your priority list, let's say, for example, you're in a situation like I am right now, okay? I have a lot of difficulties that I have to deal with every day, aside from the traditional stuff. So aside from the, hundreds of questions every single day from different people that need my guidance, or halacha answers and things of that nature, aside from running the organization, aside from the employees, aside from the salaries, the helping, all that, aside from all of that stuff, there's also a few things that are a little bit out of the norm that I have to deal with. Right now I have to deal with this lawsuit that I'm being sued, and unfortunately it's not that the lawsuit that's concerning me, it's that it's impossible to find people that are willing to help. That's the problem. The lawsuit I'm not concerned about. I just need the tools, the right lawyer that's not looking to rob us, to help, that also has the skill too. Unfortunately, you'd be surprised how much the tum'ah of the world have an impact on people, even if sometimes they're religious. It's something that is a very, very big problem. So defending this lawsuit is taking an enormous amount of energy. It's going to require, unless by some miracle, it's going to require an enormous amount of money that we don't have allocated for such a thing. We don't have the money. I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to send it somewhere or another, but we don't have a plan of allocating it for such a lawsuit because there's no reason for us to have a lawsuit. But this is what's happening. So you have to deal with this stupid lawsuit, with these stupid people, and even though it's a open-shut case, very, very simple matter, to defend the open shut case is probably going to cost more than even if you lost the case. But nonetheless, you have to defend it. So this is something that's taking some time. In addition to that, you also have different things that you have to do to running the organization, whether it's the taxes, the running the corporate part, hiring, firing, events, trying to plan for the future, trying to figure out how to actually build a place without having all the resources for it. There's 1.5 million things that are above and beyond the norm. So now, the point of everything that I'm saying to you is that I have to look at my priorities every single day. There are literally a few dozen projects at all given times. And every one of these projects, somehow, some way, has to find itself to my desk at some point, even if I don't want it to. Whether it's a new poster, or it's a new video, or it's a response to something, or it's whatever it is, everything has to somehow go through my desk. Even if I tell them I don't want to know, somehow I need to get involved. And there's always a mistake, and there's always an issue you have to fix, and there's always something you have to comment on, and you have to be involved. And that's fine. It's a fantastic team that we have. We have a team that works all over the world in all types of hours, and we have partners and students and all types of amazing people that require your time and your attention, and you can't just do things superficially. You have to be there, for that minute or 5 or 20 or an hour or whatever it is. Now, all of these things take an immense amount of energy and time, and which puts you in a situation where, okay, so I have the stuff that I have to do. I have the other stuff that I have to do that I didn't really plan for. So now, since this schedule is already massive, where you pretty much have to, go to sleep only when you simply can't stand anymore, and you have to eat when you simply are starving, and you have to breathe just simply when you have time to do so. So between all of these things, now you have to fit all this other extra stuff in the schedule. So now you have to rework your schedule. Why? Because these other things are also priority. So now when you look at this priority list, everything is a priority, but of course everything has an order. You have to reorganize everything. Okay, so wait, so this thing, is it really priority? Yeah, it's priority, but is it really number 1? No, maybe it's number 5, maybe it's 6. And you have to reorganize things. And the point of everything that I'm saying to you is that when you look at your priorities, what many people, and I would say even myself included when I first started, would look at is they would actually have Torah and education for the kids as something that's on that list. Something that's on that list where their Torah learning or teaching or both and their education for themselves and for their kids would also be on that list to see what they can move around. And one thing that I learned from Rabbi Yisrael is that it's not on that list. Torah learning, education for the kids, for yourself, it's not on the priority list. It doesn't belong on a priority list. It's not number 1 on the list. It's not number 2 on the list. It's not number 5 on the list. It's not on the list. And the reason why is because Torah is not a priority for your life. Torah is life. Meaning, just like you don't choose whether to breathe or not, you don't choose whether to learn or not. You simply have to in order to live. And when a person has that perspective, regardless of what rough patch they're going through and how busy the season is and however many distractions they have, they're never going to say, you know what, I'm so busy right now, I'm going to skip the shiur today, I'm going to skip the reading today, and I'll just make it up for, next week. I'll make it up tomorrow, I'll make it up next week, and before you know it, you stop studying for 6 months straight. I've made that mistake, and I continue to struggle with it. But it's one of those things that actually you have to fight for every hour, because you have to realize that this is something that is not part of the list. It's just not part of the list. Baruch Hashem, it's because I'm involved in Torah all day, whether it's a little bit of learning, or it's teaching, or it's answering questions, that saves me, but that I don't have the normal lifestyle. Most people are not involved in this stuff all day. Most people are, I don't know, they're building cars or houses or selling something or curing something or servicing something. They're involved in a traditional work. So they don't have that same so-called luxury of servitude. They have to really allocate a time for their neshama to breathe. Why? Because that's life. For a Torah observant Jew, for a person that wants to serve Hashem, that is life. Torah is not part of life, it is life. Torah is not part of the priority list. Torah is not on the list at all. Torah has a completely separate section within your life that does not get maneuvered around and reworked. It's rather everything else has to rework itself around Torah. And this is something that we have to fight for. It's not something that comes easy, because as much as everything that I'm saying to you makes sense to me and makes sense to you, it's still something that the Satan will do everything possible to interfere with. So the first thing we have to realize is that Torah is not something that we can play with. It's simply something that we need. We need the Torah. God doesn't need our Torah. We need it. It's our need, not his need. The second thing is that even the things that we think we know, we still have to review, we still have to read again. One of the reasons is because we have a thing in this world called memory and memory loss, also called forgetting. Now, forgetting is not something that a person chooses to do. It's just simply part of the world. And one of the things that a person needs to understand is that unless you work really, really hard on learning Torah and engraving it into your heart, it is only a matter of time before you forget it. Now, of course, I know a lot of people, they forget it as soon as they hear it. You know, a person comes to a shiur, or they even read a book. 5 minutes after the book, they put down the book, or they finish the shiur. You ask them, okay, so what did the rabbi say? And they look at you like, oh, I didn't expect that. What do you mean you didn't expect to read what you read? No, I didn't expect you to ask me what I read because I don't remember. I didn't expect you to ask me what I heard over 2 hours because I don't remember. What do you mean? You were just there for 2 hours. You were listening attentively. You even laughed a few times. You cried a few times. You don't remember nothing? And they have to think about it many times. And one of the reasons is because while they were listening to it, they were making the mistakes that the Gaon of Vilna was warning us about, which is the mistake of not engraving these lessons into their heart, not looking for those diamonds and taking ownership of them and realizing, yeah, that diamond, yeah, it's painful because it's about me, but I need it. I need it because it's about me. I need it because it's about me. I need to change that. I need to fix that. I need to do that. I don't like being rebuked. I don't like when the rabbi tells me things that make me cry. I don't like to be told that I'm wrong. I don't like apologizing. I don't even like apologizing when I do know what I did wrong. Needless to say, I don't like to apologize when I don't understand what I did wrong. And in fact, I don't even think I did anything wrong, so why should I apologize? But this is what a person needs to do in order to soften their neshama. This is what a person needs to do. They have to look for the diamonds in the shiur, in the book, and take ownership of those things. Now, they're going to have to do that an endless amount of times. And I don't mean endless amount of times of just new stuff. Endless amount of stuff they've already heard, stuff they've already read. Now, of course, you have to advance, you have to progress. Sometimes you'll need to listen to 5 shurim in order to understand the first one. Sometimes you'll have to read 30 pages, 30 dapim in the Gemara in order to understand one. So you don't want to go into the style of learning where they literally spend all of their time and all of their effort just on one daf. This many sages have spoken against. Rabbi Yisrael wrote against it in the name of many Chachamim in his Achtov Yisrael. I believe it's in Perik Aleph. How many sages, including Reuven and sages from previous generations, say that this is the wrong way to learn, where people that are literally spend months or even years on a single or 2 pages of Gemara. This is the completely wrong approach, because you have to consume a lot of content, especially if you haven't completed the entire Shas and you haven't become familiar with all of the different major sugyot and the Masechtot and so on. So to spend all of your effort on just one tractate or one page even is a very big mistake. And I remember meeting many people that fell into this trap. I even met an Avrech that was an Avrech already for 5, 6, 7 years. And when I asked him how many tractates of Gemara he completed, since he's been in yeshiva his whole life, he was an Avrech already for 5, 6, 7 years, I figured he is a very big scholar, already completed the Shas at least once or twice, if not more. And I was surprised to hear that he completed only one tractate of the Gemara. That's it. There's 36 tractate, he completed one. Meaning that I have new Baalei Tshuva, people that are relatively newly religious, 1, 2 years religious, already finished 10 times more than what he did, even though he's been religious his whole life. Now, it doesn't mean that they know necessarily a lot more than he does, or that he's bad and they're good, but rather that there is a Torah study way that does not bear fruits to people that do not know how and when to utilize it. And sometimes people will literally delve into one thing so deeply, they'll simply disregard the rest of the Torah. So of course, a person needs to know that you need to read, you need to review, you need to do a lot of things, but you need to move forward. Why do you need to do all of those things? Number one, we've already answered, it's your life. It's life itself. Without it, you will not know how to live. You will not be different than Putin and anybody else that's in that part of the world that is simply trying to acquire more sand. You're not going to be any different than them. In fact, the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim says that a person that's an Am Haaretz, is not ignoramus, is an ignoramus in Torah, should not be allowed to, and is really not allowed to eat meat, not allowed to eat cows. Why? Because the cow is better than him. He doesn't know Torah, then the cow is better than him, because at least the cow is serving its purpose. He's not learning Torah, he's not serving his purpose. So, of course, this is something that may be hard to hear for some people, but it's true. What's the difference between you and a cow? Oh, I'm human. Okay, so what? You're human. She's a cow. You may decide that makes you better. What makes you better? Oh, I speak. She speaks also. You just don't understand her. Maybe she understands you, but you don't understand her. What makes you better than a cow? In order to allow you to eat her. This is no different than what makes Putin think that he's entitled to conquer and take over Ukraine. Why? What right does he have? That's the argument that all of these Yefei Nefesh, these liberals like to, oh, why, who, what, why? What gives you the right? So you have to look at it, something that affects you. Russia doesn't affect you. The cow affects you. What gives you the right to eat a cow? The fact that it's kosher does not make it give you the right to eat it. It makes it allowed to eat by people that are allowed to eat it. What gives you the right to eat a cow? What gives you the right to eat a cow according to the Torah is if you're better than the cow. If the world was created for you and not for the cow. And the world was created for people that learn Torah. So a person that does not learn Torah has to understand that they are in a very, very bad situation. And even if they are learning Torah, if they're not learning Torah with enough dedication, they're simply doing it superficially. They're listening to a shiur here and there, or in the background. 20 years already, they're in the same exact level they were. Nothing has really changed. They're not killing anybody. They're not driving on Shabbat, but they also can't explain to you a single sugya in the Gemara. They simply can't explain to you anything. If you tell them, give a Dvar Torah, they'll tell you, let me think about it. Okay, think about it? No, next week. Next week I'll... They can't. Why? Because they don't have anything. That's not good. That's not good. So, you heard shiurim, you should have something from the shiur. So how come you don't have anything from the shiur? How come you don't have anything from that book? Because you have a problem which is called forgetting. And forgetting is part of the world. And Rabbi Ephraim says something genius. Something purely genius. Which is that the brain degenerates by force due to the aging of the material that the brain allows into his mind. Meaning that the person allows into his mind. So, even if a person has studied, has read a book, or 2, or 10, do not think for a moment that information is permanently in your mind. In fact, the older that information, the more that information ages, the more difficult it'll become to remember it, unless you're constantly reusing that material, either by applying it to your life, or by developing it, or by protecting it. Now, reusing it obviously means you're applying this information in your life. Developing it means that you're continuing to learn. What does protecting it mean? Protecting it means that you're not allowing new information that is inferior to it, that is damaging to it, to enter your mind. Because that information that you allowed into your mind, as it ages, already by default, it is becoming more distant than it was when you first got it. But the times that it starts aging by literal force is you have to realize that force is coming from you acquiring the news instead of more Torah, the poison instead of the nutrition. When you acquire news, when you acquire rap music, when you acquire filth, then guess what? That new bit of information doesn't just enter your mind, but it forces whatever good you have further deeper into your mind. Which is the reason why people that went to yeshiva, were religious for a big portion of their life, and then suddenly decided to leave, suddenly decided to stop learning, unfortunately many times eventually leave religiosity altogether, leave the Torah life altogether, and then you meet them when they decide one day, 10, 20 years later, or 5 years later, that they want to come back. Tell them, okay, so tell me something that you know. And they don't know more than a first grader, many times even less. But how is it possible? You went to yeshiva. And they even tell you, listen, I know what I'm talking about. I went to yeshiva. You know, my father is a rabbi. I know. And you ask them basic level questions, and they don't have an answer for it. Basic level understanding, they don't know. Now they know the things that even the goyim know, which is, there's kosher food, non-kosher food, you're not allowed to kill people. They know stuff like that. But if you start asking them things that perhaps require a little bit more thought, require a little bit more current knowledge, they don't know. Why? It's not that they never learned it. Many times they didn't, but many times it's not because they didn't learn it. It's because all of the filth that they have acquired from the filthy music and filthy sports and filthy promiscuity and filthy whatever else is out there, all of that forced the good so far back and so deep into their mind, it almost became like a repressed memory, like how a trauma is sometimes repressed, from its own victims, where a victim would literally go into a Shem Yachem. The trauma would be so severe that they would forget certain things, including the actual trauma itself. They wouldn't remember what happened, even though they were awake and everything was there. But it's so repressed, it's so deep. And sometimes the good that a person learned in their life becomes like that. And only toil and literally pulling it out of yourself will bring it back, but it requires effort. So the brain degenerates by force due to the aging of the material that a person allows into their mind. And this is supported, of course, by the Torah, as it says in a Sefer Dvarim, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 18. Where Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Am Yisrael, and through Moshe, you forgot the rock who gave you birth. You forgot the rock who gave birth to you, and forgot God who brought you forth. So here we see that the whole matter of forgetfulness is a part of the world, and we're not just talking about forgetting that whether you bought milk in the store, you didn't, forgot if you paid or you didn't. That is, of course. We're talking about forgot something that you actually spent time and effort acquiring, learning, studying, and still end up living by, and still end up forgetting it. Okay, so this is something that happens. Hence the reason why the Gaon of Vilna says and appeals to us that we have to not only learn, but learn for the sake of heaven. Learn for the sake of heaven. Now, sometimes you'll have a person think that learning for the sake of heaven is something that they have to do 100%, or it's better off not to learn. This is a mistake. Generally speaking, the majority of people that try to learn for the sake of heaven are going to have a portion of their learning for the sake of heaven and a portion of their learning not for the sake of heaven. And I would dare to say that the portion that's not for the sake of heaven is typically much greater than the portion that it is for the sake of heaven. The Gaon of Vilna says that learning Torah for the sake of heaven means that you're learning Torah for its own sake. And his Talmid, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, writes in the Sefer Nefesh Chaim, in chapter 4, verse 3, that Lishma, for the sake of heaven, means that it's for the sake of the Torah, whereby all of your Torah, all of the Torah matters, should be for the sake of Torah itself, which means to know and understand Torah to the point where you're able to add a deeper perspective through of your understanding, or through your depth of study, because this would make it impossible for you to turn your Torah study that is for the sake of being argumentative and promoting yourself, making yourself look smarter. This would eliminate that possibility. So in essence, what Rabbi Chaim Volozhin is saying is that, of course, Torah is something that you need to learn for its own sake, which is in order to understand it, in order to know how to apply it. This is also what the Rambam says. But there's also an added reason to it. An added reason to it, aside from knowing how to do the mitzvot and how to serve Hashem, there's also an added issue here, where the Gaon of Vilna taught him that the reason why there isn't a mitzvah in the Torah out of the 613 mitzvot that we have that says to fix your character traits, there isn't a mitzvah like this. Yet the Gaon said that the mitzvah of fixing your character traits is pretty much the biggest thing, because if you don't fix your character traits, there's leman utzarta, for what were you born? So when the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin asked the Gaon, if it's so important to fix your character traits, why isn't there a mitzvah to do so? So the Gaon of Vilna says that's because you're supposed to use the mitzvot that Hashem gave you in order to fix your character traits. Meaning that to fix your character traits is an outcome of actually doing the mitzvot the right way. So here, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin elaborates on that point and says that if you learn Torah for the sake of heaven, this in itself will help you serve Hashem better, because it'll fix the flaw that a person has, which is arrogance, that they gain through Torah learning. Because now they know more than their fellow student or friend and so on. They're a new Baal Tshuva. They think that just because they have learned the entire Chumash, the entire Mesilat Yesharim, I don't know, whatever else they learn, they think that all of a sudden their toilet doesn't smell. They wake up like roses. They know more than everybody. They know more than the rabbi. They think they already put themselves one level below the Baal Shem Tov already. This is a delusional person, but unfortunately very common, where people think that because they've learned a lot, everybody else either knows a lot less than them, and therefore they're better, or they know just a little bit more than them, but they've been learning a lot more, so therefore they're still better than them. So the Torah learning that they have makes them arrogant. And you see this on the internet many times. You see people make these posts where they decide that this is what it's supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to be. They have no concept of what Dat Torah is, what's right, what's wrong, simply whatever they're connected to emotionally, and unfortunately this happens often. So the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says that learning for the sake of heaven will help fix that. Why? Because when you learn Torah for Torah's sake, this in itself will allow you to delve deeper into the Torah, deeper into every single matter, to the point where you'll realize that the more you're learning, the more you realize you don't know that much, because the more you learn, the more you realize how much bigger the Torah is than what you thought it was. When you learned the Chumash the first time, you thought you knew something. The second time you learned it, if you learned it the right way, you realize that, wow, I actually feel like I know less than what I knew before. Even though I know more, I feel like I know less, because now I realize that the Torah is much bigger. And once you realize what a chidush is, what the different ways to extrapolate things are, you realize how endless the Torah is. So the more you learn, the deeper you learn, the bigger you realize the Torah is, which in essence humbles you, and that humbling is a direct weapon that will fight the arrogance that's within you. The very same arrogance that's developed by superficial learners is defeated by people that delve into things much more for the sake of heaven. So here we see how the teachings of the Gaon of Vilna, of how you utilize the Torah in order to fix your midot, is actually taught by his student through one of the mitzvot. Now, I can't see you guys smiling right now, but I hope you are, because it's beautiful. Now, the Rambam writes in Ilchot Tshuva, chapter 5, halacha number 5, that anyone who engages in Torah study for an earthly reward, i.e., money, zivug, whatever, some type of blessing in this world, or to save himself from punishment, this is called Torah study that's not for the sake of heaven. It's not for its own sake. While anyone that engages in Torah study only because the master of the world had commanded it, he is learning Torah for its own sake. And the Chafetz Chaim concurs in his Sefer Shem Olam, in the second volume, where he says learning Torah for its own sake means that learning Torah with the intention of fulfilling Hashem's will that we know is his Torah. Meaning that you know that the will of Hashem is that you learn Torah more and more and more and more and more. So, first, we see here that learning Torah for the sake of heaven is not necessarily so simple. Why? Because first of all, you need to know what it is. Your average person thinks that he's learning Torah for the sake of heaven. Rabbi, if I learn each day a daf, 2 dapim, and a Gemara, you think the Hashem is going to give me more money so I can buy this 4-bedroom house? Rabbi, you think if I keep Shabbat and I learn your shiur, you think that Hashem is going to send me the most beautiful wife in the world? Rabbi, if I watch the clips, not the full shiurim, but I watch all the short clips, and on Shabbat, I read for a couple of hours, you think that Hashem is going to fix all the problems that I have, especially the 3 lawsuits that I'm really guilty? You think he's going to fix all that? Rabbi, and these are serious questions. People go into the world of learning, not necessarily always with such pure hearts. They have pure neshamot that they don't know how to get a true hold of, but they have been taught themselves that if you serve Hashem, you will get a reward in this world. The Torah has been sold to them. If you keep Shabbat, you'll get parnasah. If you protect your brit, you'll find your zivug, and you'll get money. If you learn Torah, you're whatever. You're gonna do something. And everybody has been sold this bag of chips that is bound to fail. Everyone has been sold this bag of potatoes that is bound to have a few with mold in them. Bound to. Why? Because it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you will learn Torah and you will keep Shabbat and you will not find your zivug. You will not find the job you want. You will not have financial freedom. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Now, that could be because maybe you're not really learning and doing all the things that you're doing, or Hashem wants more from you, or there's something else, a different reason for this tikkun that's incomprehensible for us. And therefore, to sell Torah, to sell mitzvot, that if you do this, then you will get this, is not the right approach. Which is the reason that any time you teach that when you do this, this opens the gates of heaven, this brings that, you don't assure people that this is for sure going to happen to you. These are the possibilities. These are the doors that are open. These are the things that are closed as a result of it. These are the risks. These are the potential rewards. There is no guarantee in this world, but there is a guarantee in the next world. That there is a reward for the righteous and a punishment for the wicked, with no exceptions. Someone that's wicked will be severely punished. No exceptions. Someone that's righteous will be rewarded. No exceptions. But when you live a life that's full of shakranim, full of liars that tell you, listen, if you do this, then you're going to get this. And that this is always like something you could like feel, see, because it's this world. It's a problem. Because there are endless stories of this not happening. And in fact, the opposite of this happening. So you have to make sure that if you're listening to people that tell you that if you do this, this and this is guaranteed to happen to you, and they're talking about something in this world, Run away from such people. Either they're liars and con men, or they're simply ignoramuses. Either way, they're not qualified to teach. Because what they're teaching is not Da'at Torah. Now, of course, everyone would like to believe that their learning is Lishma. So let's try to explain what Lishma is and where it can get to when it's 100% Lishma, 100% for the sake of heaven. Many times in the corrupt part of Chassidut, not the real part of Chassidut, which is holy, which is pure, which is amazing, but the corrupt part, the part of Chassidut, or that's really fake, that tells you that there is no eternal punishment, there is no Gaon even, and all the other mumbo jumbo that they say. Now, they'll tell you all of their lies, and they'll attach the Baal Shem Tov to it. They'll attach the Lubavitcher Rebbe to it, which is really slander, because the Baal Shem Tov and nor did any tzaddik ever say such these things that they're saying. But they'll say slander about some of the greatest sages in the world. Don't be surprised if these people die Mita Mishuna one day. But nonetheless, it's the Baal Shem Tov that made statements like, when I go up to Shamayim, they tell me I have to go to Genom, I'm jumping right in there. It's statements like that, or partial stories like that, that could easily be misinterpreted. Now, the Baal Shem Tov was an extraordinary tzaddik, something that we could only hope to be like the dust under his feet. And the Baal Shem Tov would hear and see things that are not for the average person, to say the least. And one day he came to his Talmidim and he told them that he heard a bat kol, a heavenly voice, saying that because he made a mistake and a certain Jew was hurt by it, because the tzaddikim are measured like the hairbreadth. Even the smallest things that tzaddikim do, they get judged for it. So he heard a bat kol that the Baal Shem Tov, lost his olam haba, lost his share in olam haba. The Talmidim, like you right now, like, whoa, that's what happened? And he said, yeah. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. You mean lost or gained? Lost. Baruch Hashem, lost. Now they're as confused as you are. Why? Lost olam haba means horrible things. Why are you happy? So the Baal Shem Tov says to his Talmidim, all my life I dedicated to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All my life I dedicated to bring back his children. All my life I wanted to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I truly love them. But what can I do? That part of me still knows that there is a reward that I'm going to get for doing all of this. As the last Mishnah in Masechet Ukatzin says, the tzaddikim get Shai Olamot. Each tzaddik gets Shai Olamot. Shai Olamot is Gematria 310. 310 worlds. Each tzaddik gets 310 worlds in Olam Haba. So the Baal Shem Tov says, despite me serving Hashem, loving Hashem, praying to Hashem, teaching the truth, part of me knew, I'm going to get a reward for it. So that is still a motivation. So now that I heard this bat kol that says, you lost olam haba, I'm happy. Why am I happy? Because now finally I can serve Hashem for the sake of Hashem. That's it. No other reasons. I'm not getting anything for it. Because if I go to Genom, I go up to Shamayim, and they're going to tell me, Baal Shem Tov, this is the chamber you're going. All I'm going to ask them, is this the will of Hashem? And they're going to tell me, That's the thing. I'm going to say, show me, I want to run there. Why? Because my whole life I'm here to serve Hashem, but I knew I have a bias because I'm going to get a reward. Now that there's no reward, it's even better because finally I can show Hashem that I really want to serve Him, that I really love Him. And I'm not doing it for the reward. But how could I do that when there's a reward? That's why I'm happy. Anyone that understands that already is a special person. To live that is something completely different. These are the tzaddikim. But the heretics, the reshaim, the ignoramuses will distort it and take different pieces of the stories and say, oh, because he said this. Yeah, if you only understand parts of the story, you only see parts of the story, you can ruin the whole thing. But the Baal Shem Tov was Kodesh Kodashim, and all he wanted to do is to serve Hashem. And of course, the next day he came to his Talmidim and he told them, they heard my shiur in Shamayim that I told you guys that I'm excited. And they said, no, if you're so excited about serving Hashem, Hashem forgave you about what happened. You have your Olam Haba back. If all you want to do is serve Hashem, needless to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to spend a lot of time with you in Olam Haba. But that's the thing, Abutai. The tzaddikim was so special that they were willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu without thinking, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that, which is really antithetical to how people teach today in many places where they tell you, if you do this, you're going to get this. It's not really the way the Torah is supposed to be. The Baba Sali, Kodesh Kodashim, he would have seudot, different huge meals every day to feed the poor people. And this tradition is still alive. You have some of his descendants having these huge festive meals to feed poor people, to feed guests, to feed for the sake of honoring HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, none of the family members, look like they eat themselves. They're all skinny as can be, holy people. But you see, they feed more and more people, all for the sake of Hashem, all to honor Hashem, all to help His children, get people closer, and so on. Of course, wicked people take that and manipulate it and saying, "Oh yeah, they're drinking in the synagogue and eating like a pig," is also the same thing like the holy tzaddikim that did it, which has nothing to do with it. But let me show you the difference here. The Baba Sali was such a holy person that he would have these things literally on a daily basis. And he would say some scary stuff when he saw that there were different people that came to him for a blessing that was suffering, where there was one time a guy that was suffering, tremendous suffering. And literally everyone was there. They saw the Baba Sali cry and then plead with Hashem out loud, say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, cut off both of my hands just to take away his pain. Just take off both of my arms. Mamash, like literally, like some things that are unbelievable. And this is not a person that he knew his whole life. He just met him that day. But he loved Am Yisrael, he loved Hashem. He loved Am Yisrael, he loved Hashem. Which is a thing that is not such a simple thing like people think it is. Everybody thinks, because they break dance and they have a little stupid bracelet from rubber that says, I love Hashem, that means they love Hashem. Let me explain to you what loving Hashem is and what loving Am Yisrael means. The very same holy Baba Sali once had a guy that every day would deliver vegetables for free. He dealt with vegetables. He would deliver them to the Baba Sali every day and he would take these vegetables, give it to the people. This is a very righteous person, good guy. And every day he'd come to the Baba Sali, deliver it himself, cartons and cartons of vegetables. And one day, this guy comes in, starts taking out opens the trunk, starts taking out, or the back of the truck, starts taking out the crates. The Baba Sali gets up, goes out of the house, and starts yelling at him. You think I need your vegetables? You think I need your vegetables? Get out of here with your vegetables. Who needs your vegetables? You think I need your vegetables? I don't want to see you. Get out of here with your vegetables. Something no one ever heard. The guy that heard this, the guy that was the guy holding the vegetables, was trembling. He dropped the vegetables. Trembling from the shock of one of the greatest tzaddikim to walk on this planet, yelling at him, who needs your vegetables? He doesn't even know what he did. All he knows, he is shocked, he's trembling, he drops the vegetables, he can't respond, he can't talk. All he knows is something's wrong. The other students are scared to say anything. No one ever saw the Baba Sali do such a thing. All the guy can do is as quickly as possible gather the vegetables back, put them back in the cart, put them in the trunk, and drive away as fast as possible. The Baba Sali goes inside. He sees that his Talmidim are all scratching their head like, what just happened here? The Baba Sali says to them, let me explain something to you. The second that he arrived, I saw the Malach HaMavet himself arrive with him. And not just arrive with him, but stand on top of his head because it was decreed in Shemaim for him to die. And I had to do something in order to save his life. And the only thing that I can do is to kill him myself. Embarrassing him in public is equivalent to murder. And if you ask me, yes, but Rabbi, didn't you teach us what the Torah says, that a Jew that embarrasses another Jew in public loses their olam haba? I'm going to tell you you're right. And that's exactly what I'm willing to do. I'll lose my olam haba just so he doesn't die. And if you're still questioning, just wait 2 hours and see how the story develops. Not 2 hours passed, and all of a sudden everybody hears this like truck kind of pushing itself closer and closer, and eventually in front of the Baba Sali's house. Everybody comes out and they see truck is crushed. The wheel is barely holding itself together. The axle is, literally holding like it's on a thread. The truck is crushed. And the guy comes out, the very same guy with the vegetables, comes out and says, I need to talk to the Rav, please. And the Rav comes out with a big smile. He says, come, my dear. He says, Rabbi, now I know what you did. Now I know what you did because of the reason what you did saved my life. After I left here, I went to work, and usually when I go to work, I don't have the vegetables on me. But today, when I went to work, some truck blew through a sign, didn't even see me, and crushed into me. And if it wasn't for the vegetables, all the crates of the vegetables, I wouldn't be here. And I knew now that's why you did it. How many people do you know that are willing to lose their olam haba to go save another Jew? How many? So when somebody says, I'm going to study Torah for the sake of heaven 100%, or I'm already studying for the sake of heaven 100%, sake of heaven means that. That's what sake of heaven means. It means you are literally doing it purely to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name, to fulfill His laws to the best of your ability and understanding, to do everything possible without any expectation whatsoever. Surely, we all trying to become more righteous. So surely part of our learning will be for the sake of heaven. But let's not delude ourselves to think, oh, all of our learning is already for the sake of heaven. Perhaps some, hopefully some. If not at all, then we have to work on ourselves. But the point being is, we always need to know where we stand. Now, the Mishnah in Avot, in the first chapter, third Mishnah, Antigonos ish Socho received the tradition from Shimon HaTzadik, and he taught, Al tiyu ke'avadim ha'meshamshim et harav al menat lekabel pras, ela evu ke'avadim ha'meshamshim et harav shelo al menat lekabel pras. Ve'im ora shamayim alechem. Antigonos, the leader of Socho, received the tradition from Shimon HaTzadik, and he taught, be not the servants who serve the master for the sake of receiving a reward, but rather be like the servants who serve the master not for the sake of receiving a reward. And nonetheless, the fear of heaven should be upon you. Here, Antigonos, one of the Zugot, one of the greatest sages, taught something that's similar to what we just said, but if misunderstood, can be dangerous enough to start a new religion. And it nearly did. Anyone that watched our series of Musar Pirkei Avot, this is within the first few lectures of the series, elaborating on this Mishnah, where you learn that two of the students of Antigonos misunderstood what the rabbi was saying to mean, oh, if you're saying don't serve Hashem for a reward, rather serve Hashem as if there is no reward, that must mean that there is no reward. So if there's no reward, what am I serving Him for? Now, of course, this does not make much sense, but this is what happened. And from there were born the Sadducees and the Sadducees, where they exemplified the same level of heresy as some of these Manis Friedmans of the world, distorting a part of the Torah that's so fundamental that it ruins everything. Now, if you think there's no similarities, it's actually nearly identical. Because saying that there is no reward is not different than saying there's no punishment. Because when you say that there's no reward, you're in essence saying that there's no benefit in serving Hashem. That He's not a just God, that He just has us as slaves. Same concept goes when you say that there is no punishment, or that there is the same punishment across the board, which the Ramban says is heresy that turns God into a vicious God. Because when you're saying that everybody gets the same 12 months and no more, or you're saying that there is a limited punishment, then you are turning God into an evil God, because there are obviously different levels of crime and therefore deserving different levels of punishment. But when you're saying that there is either no punishment or the same punishment or some other type of distortion, you are literally turning God Almighty into something evil. So Antigonos Isacho was in essence trying to teach his students. There were some of them were at a level to understand this, where the goal of your learning Torah, of your servitude of Hashem, is not to serve Him because you'll get a reward, but rather to serve Him for the sake of heaven. And that is actually what the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes in his Ilchot Tshuva, in chapter 10, the first halacha, that a person should not say that I will fulfill the mitzvot of the Torah and occupy myself in its wisdom in order to receive all of the blessings which are contained within it, or in order to merit the life of the world to come, you shouldn't have such a mindset. Because a person whose service is motivated by these factors is considered one who serves out of fear, and he's not on the level of the prophets or of the chachamim, the wise. The only ones who serve God in this manner are common people, women, minors. They're trained to serve God out of fear until their knowledge increases and they serve out of love. So here the Rambam says you shouldn't aspire to be a person that serves just because you're afraid of bad things happening to you or because you want a reward. That is not shouldn't be an aspiration. It is certainly where you have to start, but it's not an aspiration. You should aspire to be the best servant, server of Hashem. You shouldn't be aspire to be the lowest. Just like you don't aspire to be the poorest person on the block. You don't aspire to be the worst employee. You don't aspire to be the worst teacher. You don't aspire to be the worst parent or the worst child. Everybody aspires to be better and technically the best, especially when it comes to material. So the Rambam is in essence telling you, you should aspire to be the best. Don't aspire to be the lowest. Now, how do we also know that this is indeed what he's saying? It's because the following halacha says that one who serves God out of love occupies in the Torah and the mitzvot and walks in the path of wisdom for no ulterior motive, not because of fear that evil will occur, and not in order to acquire benefit. Rather, he does so because it's true, and ultimately good will come because of it. But you need to know, he says, this is a very high level which is not merited by every wise man. Meaning even among the chachamim, this is not something that everybody achieves. So why did you say it then? If you're telling me don't serve Hashem from fear, serve Him from love, serve Him from, completely not expecting anything, but yet this is not even achieved by most people, including the wise people, including the chachamim, why did you mention it? Because you are ambitious everywhere else. You're ambitious in your work, you're ambitious in your marriage, you're ambitious everywhere else. You should be just as ambitious in your servitude of Hashem. You may not reach all of your ambitions at work. You may not reach all your ambitions in all the other things that you have, but you still have those ambitions, and therefore you should also have those very same type of ambitions in your servitude of Hashem. And a person that serves Hashem to the best of their abilities surely will get to a much higher level to a person that serves Hashem based on wherever they feel comfortable. And then in the third halacha, the Rambam says that the proper degree of love that a person should have for Hashem, that it should be so great it exceeds the love until his soul is bound up in the love of Hashem, and thus he will become obsessed with this love as if he's lovesick. Meaning that we should serve Hashem with such dedication that begins with fearing outright punishment in this world and the next, then using that fear to develop a deeper connection to Hashem, because the fear of Hashem is what makes you into a vessel to receive the truth, to receive the Torah. And that fear is also a way that you connect to Hashem even deeper, because as you serve Hashem even better, you realize that those very same things you're afraid of will not happen to you because you're serving Hashem. Those fears that you have of Gaon, seventh level, for the guy that's wasting seed and desecrates Shabbat, is not going to happen to you because you're not doing that. So that fear actually motivates you and also makes you happy. That fear makes you happy because you know these things won't happen to you because you're not one of those sinners. And that in itself, that knowledge, makes you love Hashem even more, makes you want to serve Hashem even more, makes you want to learn even more, makes you a vessel to receive more Torah, and thereby start falling in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with His children, more and more each and every single day, to the point where you become love sick over Hashem. Where someone that tells you, listen, I want to come to your house, and you tell them, as long as you come modest, you're allowed to come. But if you're not modest, don't come. But what do you mean? That's offensive. Exactly. It's offensive to my God that I love more than you, regardless of who you are. I love my God more than you. And I'm not going to allow you, and as much as I like you and even love you, get in the way of my love for my God. Yeah, but I know you for a long time. I know. And that's why I'm telling you, I want you to come. But you have to be modest. Why? Because your immodesty is insulting to my God. And I can't afford to see it. What you do on your time is your business. I don't know what you do. I hope you do tshuva. But if you're going to come to my territory, you're not going to insult my God in front of me. Why? Because I love Him. Yeah, but aren't you the same guy that talks about Gehenna and punishment and horrible things? Yes, I am. Because that's what the sages teach. As a way to fall in love with Hashem. It's not taught in order to give you nightmares and make you more connected to scary stories, but rather it's to teach you that those very same things that are horrible could either happen or not happen to you. If you serve Hashem, it won't happen to you, and therefore you should be happy. If you don't serve Hashem, hopefully they inspire you to change your mind and start serving Hashem. Meaning either way, those tools are warnings that are for your benefit. And I love Hashem for showing me those warnings, because that gives me the opportunity to serve Hashem and express my love for Hashem by spending all of my resources, all of my time, all of my energy, all of my mind to spread the warning. Spread the warning. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not have to punish his kids. What's a greater way to express love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than to save his children from his punishment? What parent wants to punish their kids? No parent wants to punish their kids. So if I and you can save his kids from the punishment, there is literally no better way to express your love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the Rambam specifically says that in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have to have a starting point. You have to have a starting point. To think that a person can start serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu purely out of loving Hashem and studying Lishma for the sake of heaven is not realistic. To think that you are going to do kiruv just by loving everybody and tell them that they're all great, it's not realistic. Why? Because the very same sages, including the Rambam, said that's not possible. Rambam, Ilchot Tshuva, chapter 10, halacha number 5, says, anyone who occupies himself with Torah in order to receive reward or to protect himself from retribution is considered as one who is not occupied for the sake of God. In contrast, anyone who occupies himself with it, not because of fear, nor to receive a reward, but rather for love of the Lord. Who commanded it is one who occupies himself for God's sake. Nevertheless, the sages declared a person should always occupy himself with Torah, even if it's not for the sake of God, but out of the service which is not intended for God's sake. Because eventually you will come and serve Hashem for the intended purpose for God's sake. And therefore, when one teaches children, women, and most of the common people, one should teach them to serve God out of fear and in order to receive a reward. As their knowledge grows and their wisdom increases, this secret should be revealed to them slowly, bit by bit. They should become accustomed to this concept gradually until they grasp it and know it and begin serving God out of love. And therefore the following halakha says that it's well known and clear that the love of God will not become attached within a person's heart until he becomes obsessed with it at all times as is fitting, leaving all things in the world except for this. Meaning that to get to a point to love Hashem and learn only for the sake of heaven is not something that happens naturally, especially not initially. Because it's the typical nature of a person is to expect something. And that's why the Rambam writes, to finalize this point, how can only love God be out of as an outgrowth of knowledge? How can someone love God? One can only love God as a result of knowledge with which he knows him. Because the nature of one's love depends on the nature of one's knowledge. And a small amount of knowledge arouses a lesser love. A greater amount of knowledge arouses a greater love. And therefore it's necessary for a person to seclude himself in order to understand and conceive wisdom and concepts which make his Creator known to him according to the potential which man possesses to understand and comprehend. So here the Rambam writes that all of these fairy tales that people tell the public about, oh, love Hashem without fear and all that stuff, it simply does not exist. It's a distortion of the Torah. But those very same people also distort Torah in other, much more horrific ways. Much more horrific ways. And it's important to know that when a person reaches higher levels of real Torah, they'll see things in their life. Why? Because that's also promised. Also promised in the Torah, where in the Mishnah in Avot, chapter 6, first Mishnah, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma, zoche לדברים הרבה. ולא עוד, אלא שכל העולם כולו, כדאי הוא לו. נקרא רע, אהוב, אוהב את המקום, אוהב את הבריות, משמח את המקום, משמח את הבריות, ומלבשו ענווה ויראה, וכו'. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes says that whoever engages in Torah for its own sake, meaning for the sake of heaven, what happens? Merits many things. Furthermore, the creation of the entire world is worthwhile for his sake alone. He is called a friend by Hashem, a beloved. He himself loves the omnipresent. He loves his creatures, meaning he loves Am Yisrael. He gladdens the omnipresent. He gladdens his creatures. The Torah clothes him in humility and fear of God. It makes him fit to be righteous, devout, fair, and faithful. It moves him away from sin and draws him near to merit. From him, people enjoy counsel and wisdom, understanding and strength. As it is said, mine are counsel and wisdom. I am understanding, mine is strength. The Torah gives him kingship and dominion and analytical judgment. The secrets of the Torah are revealed to him. He becomes a steadily strengthening fountain, and like an unceasing river, he becomes modest, patient, and forgiving of insult to himself. The Torah makes him great and exalts him above all things. So if you're saying that you study for the sake of heaven only, what'd you get? Would you get any of this stuff? Because that's part of the signature. If you didn't get any of that stuff, something's wrong. Perhaps you should check if really you're studying for the sake of heaven. It's not necessarily an insult. It's simply a reality check we all need. A reality check that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin told us in his Sefer, Nefesh HaChaim, where he says that the Yetzirah in Nefesh HaChaim in chapter 4, the prologue for the fourth gate in Nefesh HaChaim, he brings the Gemara, Masechet Sukkah, page 52a, where he says that the greater a man, the stronger is Yetzirah. So so if somebody's righteous, he doesn't have a Yetzirah, doesn't have an evil inclination not to put on tefillin. He doesn't have a Yetzirah not to learn Torah. So what's his Yetzirah? He's not having a Yetzirah to go, to a nightclub. So what's his Yetzirah of a righteous person? You know what's the Yetzirah of a righteous person? His Yetzirah pretends to be Yetzirah Tov. The more righteous a person is, the more the Yetzirah puts on masks. And he starts pretending to be Yetzirah Tov, says Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. What's an example? Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says a person that starts thinking things that are not what the Torah says. What are those? Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says something scary. He says you should know that when you think that doing a mitzvah or learning Torah must be completely free of impure thoughts, you are being duped and led astray by the Yetzirah. What? You're telling me that if I have bad thoughts and therefore I decide not to learn Torah, you're telling me that's a mistake? That if I have bad thoughts while I'm praying, that's normal? Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says, you think that doing a mitzvah of learning Torah is supposed to be free of bad thoughts? You have fallen into the trap of the Yetzirah. Why? The Yetzirah is pretending to be Yetzirah Tov. He's trying to make you think that if you do good, it's supposed to come for free. It's supposed to come without interruption. So much so that the Yetzirah is telling you that when you do a mitzvah, you should spend all of your effort to have all the kavanah in the world. And he gives an example. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin gives an example. He says there's a guy that he wants to do a mitzvah of having all the kavanah when he's eating the matzah of Pesach. But he read in his books, Kabbalistic books, that you should have a kavanah for this, a kavanah for that, impurity for this, impurity for that, and think about this name and that name. And he delves and delves and delves, and before you know it, the seder continues, and it's already morning. And he says, and he finally eats the matzah in the morning. And he says, and this guy thinks that he did good. This guy thinks that his intentions, his kavanah, is much more important than HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decree of when to do the mitzvah. And his delusion has led him astray. Where his Yetzirah pretended to be Yetzirah Tov, where it said, no, if you're not going to do a mitzvah without any distractions, if it's not going to be with complete purity, you might as well don't do it. He says that's the Yetzirah telling you. Because it's surely better and welcomed by Kadosh Baruch Hu to do a mitzvah without kavanah, but in accordance with Hashem's instructions. At the time that He said to do it, rather than do it with the best kavanah, but at the wrong time. The same as a person eating a matzah with all the kavanah in the world, but on Yom Kippur, when you're supposed to fast. Or blowing the shofar on Pesach. Or building a sukkah on Rosh Hashanah. All these wrong timings. But you had kavanah. Your kavanah is meaningless. Your yetzirah is pretending to be yetzirah tov. And therefore, in the fourth gate, chapter 33, he says the following. He says, remember, the totality of man's life adds up to no more than an amount of time he devoted to the study of Torah. If he stops learning, being fascinated with the glitter of this world of darkness, he becomes a prisoner of his yetzirah. If that happens, why should he go on living? He's mired in the swamp of perfidy. Although he is physically alive in this world, he's as good as dead. Stumbling downhill, he does not realize that his very soul is at risk. And the Torah itself warns, in Mishle chapter 8 verse 36, he who sins against me destroys his soul. And also, however, take care and guard yourselves well, so that you do not forget the things that your eyes saw. In the Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 9. And the Gemara brings another source, Gemara Masechet Menachot, page 99b, that this can be compared to the case of a man who gave a type of bird, a swallow, to his servant to safeguard, and said to him, do you think that if you allow it to become lost, I'll take from you a coin, a isar? I will in fact take your soul from you. And the Midrash explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to a person, my lamp is the Torah. This is the Midrash Rabbah. Midrash Rabbah Dvarim. Hashem says to a person, my Torah, that's my lamp. Your lamp is your neshama. I'm giving you, putting in your hands, my lamp. Guard it. But if you don't look after my lamp, I'm going to take back your lamp. Now, the liberal-minded hate that midrash. Why? It makes God sound threatening. The people that are trying their best to be as righteous as possible tell you, no, that's not threatening. That's reality. That's a warning that I appreciate. Because now that I know, I'm going to do everything possible to avoid being in that problem, being in that circumstance. And when a person realizes that all of the punishments that are promised are true and real, they do everything in their power to avoid them. And in the process, they make that yirat shamayim, that fear of the Almighty, makes them a vessel to receive more truth from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says, that there is no Judaism, there is no Torah without fear of the Almighty. This is also a Mishnah. There is no such thing as serving Hashem without fear. Woe to the man that serves Hashem without fear. So that fear helps me become a vessel to learn more, helps me become a vessel for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to use me for more things in this world, helps me fall in love with Him. Because the more I fear Him, the more I fall in love with Him. And this, Rabotai, will ultimately allow us to at least have a chance to increase our Torah learning to a higher level of lishma. I don't know if we, or I at least, could reach 100% Torah lishma, or 50%, or 5%, or 90%. I don't know. That's for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to decide. What I do know is that we do have the tools in our hands to try. And try we will. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this too will give each and every single person that's watching the shiur, that's sharing the shiur, that is reviewing the shiur and studying the shiur, the strength and wherewithal to serve Hashem even higher than they thought was possible. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.
אני מברך את הרבנים, רגע. אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בלשונות ליבם לטובה ולברכה. שבכל מה שיפנו ישכילו ויצליחו. יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה. איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
מיאמי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תאמינו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.